Leaked Resident Evil Zero remake, it's encouraging update. So I seen this article a few days back and I was going to do a video on it. I've actually missed out on actually uploading some videos for the past few days. I've been going through some stuff, so I kind of didn't really get the opportunity to. So there's a few articles here and there that I'm going to go over that are a couple days old, but I still wanted to go over them and do some videos on them and then kind of keep it going because some of them that I'm going to be doing on, we got some information that came out, a few days back, and then some other videos that I'm going to be doing with a little bit more updates on some of the more current stuff with that. So as far as Resident Evil goes, this is gonna be the first one I'm gonna be doing. I think there's like 2 or 3 other videos I'm gonna be doing, hopefully within the next few days, going over some of the information that we're seeing in regards to Capcom and Resident Evil. But this was one I definitely wanted to go over, especially because Resident Evil Zero is one of the games I grew up with playing. Obviously, I was a big fan of Resident Evil Remake because I did have the GameCube back in the day, so that was one of the games I did play a lot of myself. I was one of the people that did, the whole unlocking everything that you kind of could, getting infinite rocket launchers and handgun ammo and everything like handguns that you can get unlimited ammo with and everything like that. I gotta say, out of the Resident Evil remake, the only thing I don't think I ever actually beat was invisible mode. So I'm pretty sure I was able to do everything else as far as like unlockables and everything like that, except for invisible mode. And I'm pretty sure I already know what the thing is that you unlock. It's you get like a special message from the developers and the creators of Resident Evil Remake. There's like a note that they give you, kind of congratulating you, kind of a thing. So that's the only thing I never actually achieved myself. I probably will go back and go and try to make that happen one of these days, especially because I still do have my GameCube and everything like that with Resident Evil Remake. So for sure, want to be able to give that the opportunity to make that happen. But as far as Resident Evil Zero goes, I am kind of excited with the information that we are getting in regards to this. So, per usual, we'll go ahead and go over the article, check out the information we got, and then I'll give my thoughts as we go along. So, the Resident Evil Zero remake, which has not been officially announced by Capcom at the time of this writing, is said to be still very much in production. Resident Evil Zero was originally released as a Nintendo GameCube exclusive before its HD remaster saw it released on modern platforms. In many ways, a standard old school Resident Evil survival horror adventure, Resident Evil Zero has features that make it one of the more unique entries in the series. And that is one of the things for me, like I said, it was one of those games I did play back in the day because I did have the GameCube. Resident Evil Zero was a weird one because that was one of those games where like I used to play it back in the day when I was younger, and I thought it was kind of right up there with Resident Evil Remake. But as I got older, I kind of went back and replayed it one time. And I remember thinking to myself, like, it wasn't as good as Resident Evil Remake. It still had its moments. There was still some good things about the game itself, but I don't know what it was. If I just, it's been so long that I don't really remember. I have to go back and replay it just to give it a shot, especially because I do have the HD remaster, just to see what exactly it felt like was missing compared to Resident Evil Remake. Because obviously the story isn't as good compared to the original, but I feel like it was something to do with the story, and I think it was some of the gameplay as well. I'd have to, like I said, double check and go back and replay the games just to kind of see. But yeah, that was the one thing I do remember was that it wasn't quite the same as I remember from when I was younger. And we'll go ahead and continue on. So, Resident Evil's defining gameplay mechanics is how it lets players swap between the two playable characters at will, whereas previous Resident Evil games restricted players to one character per playthrough. Swapping between Billy Cohen and Rebecca Chambers opened the door for unique puzzle opportunities and combat strategies. Resident Evil Zero is also known for ditching item boxes and instead having players place unwanted items directly on the ground. And that definitely was kind of a different factor compared to Resident Evil Remake, was the fact that there were no item boxes. And then I remember another thing that was kind of criticized about Resident Evil Zero was the fact that Rebecca, she acts very timid and scared throughout Resident Evil Remake. Like she can't kind of hold her own, kind of a thing. She needs Chris to kind of help her out and save her. Whereas when you play Resident Evil Zero, she can hold her own, and it's almost like she goes backwards as far as character development and everything like that. Because some of the stuff that she needs protecting from Chris and everything like that in Resident Evil Remake was kind of minuscule compared to what what she actually had to deal with in Resident Evil Zero. So instead of being able to kind of realize like, hey, I went through all this stuff, went through my own experience in Zero, and I can kind of hold my own, she kind of falls back and goes back to like this timid girl that needs rescuing in the remake. There are those that love Resident Evil Zero and others that feel it's like it loses its momentum after the opening train segment, but regardless, it seems fans may be getting a remake of the game at some point down the line. Resident Evil insider Dusk Golem recently took to Reset Era to address the Resident Evil Zero remake, saying that the unannounced game is still very much in production, but that the project had a big change in regards to the developers working on it. Of course, fans should still take any claims about the Resident Evil Zero remake with a grain of salt since the project has not yet been officially announced by Capcom. And that's kind of the weird thing is that there's been a lot of information of Zero getting a remake and that it's going to be coming pretty soon. But yeah, that is very true of the fact that there isn't any announcement still from Capcom themselves. So the fact that all this information has come out is a little bit weird on Capcom's part because of the fact that there's so much, that I feel like fans and people that are kind of in the loop have been keeping up with have seen that, yeah, there is the production that's going on with it, and it should be coming out fairly soon for the most part. I remember hearing that it was I think I did it in one of my other videos as well, where Resident Evil Zero remake and Resident Evil 9 are kind of close to each other as far as development and being close to being done around the same time. So they're speculating that if there is going to be a release from one of the two games, more than likely Capcom should focus on Resident Evil 0 coming out first and then letting Resident Evil 9 come out afterwards. And then Resident Evil 0 remake is rumored to be in development. Capcom has kept quiet about its plans for future Resident Evil games, but as the survival horror franchise remains one of the company's top draws, it's only a matter of time before the next entry is announced. If the rumors are to be believed, there are at least 3 Resident Evil projects on the horizon. Besides the Resident Evil 0 remake, it's believed that Capcom is working on Resident Evil Code Veronica remake, and as far as the brand new entries go, Resident Evil 9 is said to be in active development. And that's one of the things again where it's like it's a little bit weird because we really haven't heard anything from Capcom themselves. So there is talks of Resident Evil 0 coming out. There is the word out there that's been getting out that Resident Evil Code Veronica is getting a remake as well. But there is that statement that was made that it's not going to be as ambitious as, let's say, Resident Evil 2 remake, which is really unfortunate to hear because I feel like out of all of the Resident Evil games, as far as the numerical goes, Code Veronica, I consider being one of those, even though that it's not necessarily in the numbers game. I feel like it is one of those games that has the potential to really be something amazing and could actually be a really scary game if they do it right. And then, of course, we got Resident Evil 9 coming out. There's some weird information that's been coming out in regards to that game. I've done a few videos on that and actually have a few videos that should be coming out either later today, if not maybe tomorrow or within the next few days in regards to that game itself. But there's some stuff that's been going on with that one as well. And yet again, Capcom hasn't announced anything. So it's a little bit weird and it's kind of interesting to see what's going to happen exactly in regards to the Resident Evil franchise in that regard. So it's believed that Resident Evil 9 will be the next Resident Evil, with the rumored remake to follow. Resident Evil 9 rumors and leaks have been coming on a regular basis, but nothing official has been announced by Capcom. It's believed that Resident Evil 9 will continue the story where Resident Evil Village left off and serve as a closure to the trilogy that started with Resident Evil 7. But that remains to be seen. Resident Evil fans will just have to wait and see if there's truth to any of these rumors. And that's kind of one of the weird things that they're kind of looking at Resident Evil 9 as like the trilogy 4, 7, 8, and 9. Especially because they kind of made it seem like with Resident Evil 8, Ethan's story was kind of done. And yeah, they were kind of continuing on with it with his daughter. But I feel like from what it seems like as far as fans are concerned, not too many people are too like crazy about hearing what's going on with Ethan or his daughter in that regard. I feel like more fans are concerned with what's happening with like Jill, Chris, Leon, Claire, uh, who else? Billy, not Billy, Rebecca, and then uh, Barry, kind of a thing. I feel like a lot of those characters are more of what people would rather see rather than what's going on with Ethan and his family and everything like that. So some good information for the most part in regards to Resident Evil 0. As far as Code Veronica, there still hasn't really been any announcement in that regard. And then as far as 9 goes, it's still a little bit up in the air because of the fact that, again, Capcom hasn't made any statements themselves. So they haven't given any fruition to what's going on as far as the rumors that have been coming out. So fingers crossed. I'm really hoping that we are going to get some good news with Resident Evil 0 coming out, in regards to them coming out with a remake. I'm kind of interested in the direction they're going to try to go with, especially because of the fact that there hasn't been any news in regards to a remake for Resident Evil 1. So, with the original Spencer Mansion and everything like that, I'm a little bit curious as to what's going to happen in that regard because I feel like if they do decide to do a remake of Resident Evil 1, I feel like that's going to be one where they're going to try to be the most ambitious and try to do their best to really get the story right and make sure they do that one justice because with Resident Evil Remake coming out on the GameCube, I feel like it did such a great job from the original game as to creating more of the story, building more on the environments, kind of giving it the justice that it really needs. And I feel like personally, Resident Evil Remake is probably the best remake I think in video game history. I could be way off. I know there's some people that might think of something that comes to mind that might be better, but as far as the game itself goes, building from what Resident Evil 1 was on the PlayStation, I feel like that has got to be the best remake in my opinion as far as video games, not just in the Resident Evil franchise, but in video games altogether. So those are my thoughts on that. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section. Are there any Resident Evil 0 fans that are happy to be hearing that there is potential for the remake to be coming, fairly soon? And if you guys would like to see a remake of that one, let me know what you guys think in regards to what you would want to see as far as improvements with either the story or the gameplay in that regard. So if you guys can let me know your guys' thoughts in the comments, if you guys could like, share, subscribe, all that good stuff. If you guys have been watching this long, I really appreciate it. It means a lot. And yeah, until next time, Harmonic out. Peace.